Hello and welcome to the EdjSports NFL podcast for the Divisional Round weekend of action. And what a weekend it was. I am your host, Ian O'Connor, Senior Data Analyst here at EdjSports. Joining me, as always, is Scott Brown, our VP of Data Science here at EdjSports. And Scott, I mentioned it was an amazing weekend for football.
It was, Ian. I mean, what words can even do justice? Amazing, incredible, outstanding, highly entertaining. It was unbelievable how much great action we were privileged to as fans of the game on both Saturday and Sunday. Every game coming down to a field goal. In the case of the first three games, field goals to win it. And in the case of the last game, a field goal to tie it, send it into overtime in that Buffalo-Kansas City game. Just absolutely incredible action, and we're here to break it down for you and go through the weekend that was.
Yeah, all four games you mentioned ending on walk-offs. All four games decided by a combined 15 points. 3 games, 3-point victories, one a 6-point victory in overtime. So we'll dive into the most exciting of the games. Save the best for last, as I mentioned last week. I think on the pregame video for that one. Before doing that, though, just want to remind you, as usual, you can find us on the EdjSports Podcast Network and our EdjSports YouTube, where you can find this show, our betting preview, as well as our matchup videos on the EdjSports YouTube channel for every game every week. Only 3 games left to this weekend in the Super Bowl. Of course, we'll have matchup previews for those. We'll have betting previews as well, looking at the lines and the totals on those. Also, subscribe to those shows on the podcast network and EdjSports YouTube. Please give us a 5-star review as well to help us grow our audience. Now we'll just move right into the most exciting game of the weekend, the game of the year, perhaps the game of the century, one of the greatest games of all time. From the reactions I've seen last night and this morning, it's all anyone can talk about. Bills and the Chiefs was expected to be the best game of the week, and all of these games were expected to be very good. After last week, we had a blowout in 4 of the 6 games. This week, we're expecting some close games, and this one was one of those between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, hyping it up all week how good it was. It lived up to the hype and then some. It probably lived up to the hype and then went over tenfold. Just an amazing game, close. The fireworks didn't really happen until the end. It was a close game throughout the game. I think it was 14-14 at halftime. Each coach did have one of our best or made our best and worst calls of the week. Every bit of win probability as well is valuable in a game like this. And there were a couple of decisions that looked like could have cost either team there in the third and the fourth quarter. It started early on, though, the Bills' opening drive. McDermott was aggressive. Had 4th and 2 at midfield on that opening drive. 12:44 in the game, less than 3 minutes in, goes for it. It's a 4.3% increase in pre-snap win probability. Josh Allen ends up picking up 10 yards, getting the first down. And then at the end of that drive, ends up facing 4th and goal at the 1. Decided to go for it again. This was 4.6%. So between these two decisions, Scott added 8.9. I can't math this morning. 8.9% in pre-snap win probability on a first drive. That's pretty good. And he came out aggressive, knowing what it was going to take to beat this Chiefs team.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to see setting the tone early there, picking up about 9% win probability on that opening drive. Props to Sean McDermott there, really, really coming out, guns blazing, knowing that this is likely going to come down to the wire. 2 highly competent offenses that can put up loads of points, as we saw in this one. The pregame total was 54 points, definitely among the higher point totals that we see in a game. And wouldn't you know it, they would wind up registering 72 points in regulation. Just absolutely, an outlier of a game from a scoring standpoint. And what this means, I think, from Sean McDermott's standpoint, is you gotta pick up every edge you can in this really hard-fought, closely contested battle. He did this on the opening drive, going for it twice, as you mentioned, once on 4th and 2 at midfield, and then another once again, 4th and goal from the 1. Just really, really maximizing the edge there. And it would obviously be crucial, right? It would come in handy to have picked that up. Obviously, they executed well as they needed to, and wound up punching it in for a touchdown. So, as we're going to get to here in just a second, it looks like even though things started off on the right foot in this one, things sort of turned a little bit towards the end of the game, and we'll talk about that here in a minute.
Absolutely. In the second half, Andy Reid got in on the action with some aggressive play calling Third quarter, a little bit, not too long into the third quarter, 10:06 left, only 5 minutes into that second half. Had a 4th and 1 at the Buffalo 40, decides to go for it. They're tied at 14 at this point. Really not a lot to talk about on this one, I think, instead of attempting, a 58-yarder or even punting, which I can't imagine we would see Andy Reid do here. He obviously did not. Went for it. It was an 8% increase in pre-snap win probability. Patrick Mahomes hit Jerick McKinnon for a 20-yard gain and a first down. So saw both coaches being aggressive there. But as the game wore on, and as we see this happen a lot in games, coaches start off aggressive, and then as the stakes get higher and more highly leveraged situations late in the game, it's really kind of, you never know which way these coaches are going to go. And as you can see, both started off aggressive, but then McDermott had the worst call of the week. They're late in the third quarter, 5 minutes left, 4th and 1 at his own 34. Decides to punt. They're down 17-14. This is a 7.4% error in pre-snap win probability. And again, you might be thinking they're on their own 34. Saw Brandon Staley get hammered for this a few weeks ago, even though we agreed with that decision. But this one, from what I saw, there weren't many people complaining, or there weren't many people agreeing with the decision to punt. We didn't really have the fireworks and the excitement yet. That comes later, but still knowing what these two offenses can do, especially with Patrick Mahomes on the other side, to punt on a 4th and 1 when you've got a quarterback like Josh Allen, who's designed basically to pick up a yard when you need it. He's 6'4", 230 pounds, whatever, something crazy, but big dude that you should expect to get less than a yard. And Scott, McDermott goes aggressive and doesn't even give him a chance. Decides to punt this ball, and the Chiefs end up scoring a touchdown anyway.
Yeah, really, really a head scratcher, especially in light of that opening drive and how he came out and set the tone. As you mentioned, it kind of seems like, or kind of feels like, these coaches, when when they're in a bigger moment, right? When sort of the game draws on and the decisions become leveraged, right? Because there's less game ahead of them. That's when they sort of like turtle up and go conservative, so as maybe not to face criticism from being aggressive and not having it work out. But yeah, I mean, I guess setting aside the psychology of it, just really not a good call here, and really doesn't make sense, right? I mean, they were going for it on 4th and 2 from just 16 yards further down the field on the opening drive when the game was tied. But here they're down 3, which should, obviously make you even more aggressive because you're trailing against, a team that can just absolutely light up the scoreboard. And yeah, you just really have to, I think, continue on, right? Keep the pedal to the metal, keep going for it. And for whatever reason, Sean McDermott decided to punt here. Doesn't really make sense to us. Don't really like the call, and as you mentioned, winds up being our worst call of the week.
Yeah, and mentioned Mahomes and company went down, scored a touchdown. They did miss the extra point, but still went up 23-14. They got back to the position where Buffalo would have failed, I think, in just a few plays. So in a game like this, it wasn't super high scoring at that point, 31 total points coming up on the fourth quarter. But just knowing what you have on the other side and what you've got on your side, again, Josh Allen runs very well, led the team in rushing, and just that big body that is going to pick up that first down, probably even more than the expected rate, around 70%. You've got to put the ball in his hands. But then Andy Reid did the same thing later in the fourth quarter. At this point, they're up so that the Chiefs get that touchdown, and then that's when on the very next play after the kickoff, Josh Allen hits Gabriel Davis for a 75-yard touchdown, the very first play of that drive. So it's 23-21 at this point, 13 and a half minutes in the fourth quarter. And the Chiefs have a 4th and 5 on the Buffalo 46, so across midfield, and decides to punt. And we talk about this a lot, Scott, with the value of how much field position you can really gain here versus going for it with an offense like that. So I'll let you kind of talk about that a little bit more in depth here.
Yeah, and it's obviously you're outside of field goal range, so that's not a realistic option. 4th and 5 isn't great. I mean, you would obviously love to have a shorter yardage situation, but as we've seen time and time again with this Chiefs offense, 4th and 5 might as well be 4th and 2 or 4th and 1, something like that, based on how this team can connect in the passing game and all the threats and weapons they have. But yeah, you're just punting is just feels so bad here because in a game where points are, this may sound sort of counter to what you usually hear, but like they're just so cheap, right? Because of how good these offenses are. So, and by extension, because points are cheap, the field position, right, is not nearly as valuable as just possession, right? Like keeping the ball. And when you punt, you're conceding possession. And so what if maybe if the field position winds up being 25 yards difference or 30 yards difference or something like that, because where they are on the field, the Buffalo 46, they're not really going to be able to maximize their punter's legs. So it just, yeah, we really don't like it here from Andy Reid. Certainly he has cover in the sense that it's 4th and 5, but our model is able to, I think, really dig in deep here and realize that, yeah, this is a pretty meaningfully bad decision, worth about 5.2% GWC in this moment. And yeah, we don't like it. I think both, in this case, both coaches got in the act of being too conservative in big moments on 4th down, and yeah, both wind up in our top 5 this week, before the absolute calm before the storm of that final 2 minutes in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say it ended up kind of not really mattering because there were about a million points scored after this, and it didn't really come down to 4th downs. But yeah, you mentioned it, points being cheap, kind of almost easy to come by, for that sounds bad, like you said, because points are never easy in the NFL. But the way this game looked like it was going to play out at this point, those quick strikes on the last couple of drives, it seemed like whether Mahomes or Allen, whichever side you're on, as much as you trust your defense and want to put them in a good position by trying to pin the other team, it seemed like they were going to score whether they started from midfield or from their own 5-yard line. Like there was just no one stopping either of those guys last night. And then that's when kind of things went crazy coming down at the 2-minute mark. So right after the 2-minute warning, first play coming out, the Bills have 4th and 13 on the Kansas City 27. I think it was 3rd and 6, and the Chiefs just kind of blew up the play. It looked like it was supposed to be a little dump off screen for Josh Allen, and just completely blew it up. Ended up being a 7-yard loss going into that 2-minute warning, creating 4th and 13. You're like, oh man, this is going to be it. The Bills are going to go for it. They're not going to get it. It's going to be tough. But Josh Allen completes a 27-yard pass for a touchdown to Gabriel Davis, and it's a 29.6% increase in win probability. You might not remember, which of these it was. Gabriel Davis scored 4 touchdowns, but Scott, I'm sure you saw this was the one where Gabriel Davis on his route just completely broke the ankles of the cornerback, faking outside and coming in. And this play was just, you kind of, at first I was like, how did he get that wide open in the end zone? You see the replay, that was just an awesome route.
Oh man, it was something to behold. I was watching it live, and yeah, perfect application of the expression broke the defender's ankles. Left that corner in the dirt and was wide open in the end zone. I remember watching that play live, and without he got far enough downfield where he was no longer in frame, and then all of a sudden that it's a desperate 4th and long situation. You're expecting Josh Allen, to throw something at the sticks, and all of a sudden he just eyes go upfield and he just unleashes a ball into the end zone to a wide open Gabriel Davis. Yeah, that guy, what a game! 4 touchdowns. What a great game. I can't tell you how many times while that ball was in the air, uh, you know, you know, uh, in his direction where I thought he looked like Stephon Diggs, and he was running around like Stephon Diggs, like we've come to know. But yeah, making a name for himself in this game and just absolutely tearing it up. Yeah, and he wasn't done. It was, we'll get to here in just a second.
Yeah, the Bills would get the 2-point conversion, so they go up 29-26. And then just a few plays later, a minute 13 left, 2nd and 10 on their own 36. Mahomes completes a pass to Tyreek Hill coming across the field, like from left to right, catches it in stride, and then just turns on the burners like he does, the cheetah, and is able to get over to the sideline and just outrun everyone for a 64-yard touchdown. It's 29.5% increase, so just behind that last touchdown. That was 29.6% win probability swing. So the Chiefs take the lead, a minute 2 left, and you think, all right, Mahomes has done it. They're up. They're up 4 at this point, only a minute left. As much as Josh Allen, as good as he's been today, you're thinking, man, it's going to be tough for them to come back. And sure enough, 17 seconds left, 1st and 10 at the 19. They've got a few strikes. He hits Gabriel Davis again for that touchdown, second most impactful play, 35.6. And the one thing I was kind of thinking about with this is it just, as great a game as that was for Davis, first playoff game ever, or first person to ever have 4 receiving touchdowns in a playoff game. that's something he's going to talk about forever, be remembered for forever, talk to, kids, grandkids, this kind of stuff. It just sucks that it came at a loss. Even though it was as great a game as it is, and to have an accomplishment like that is awesome, but just can't help, at least for me, to feel bad that they weren't able to win this game with a performance like that from Gabriel Davis.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously just about every, you could say that too of Josh Allen, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but um yeah, I mean, I think silver lining is, man, that if Gabriel Davis can perform like that, on a game in game out basis, man, what a absolutely, amazing performance. He's got a bright career ahead of him if he can do that. This play was definitely, it looked like, the Chiefs secondary was in disarray, and in, sort of miscommunication or confusion about who was covering whom on this one. And I think Davis was in the slot and just had, was driving his defender towards the outside, got inside leverage up the seam, and was just wide open again. Um, and of course, Josh Allen was hitting everybody. He was throwing
He was
darts right
throwing
there.
lasers.
Yeah, he was throwing absolute lasers. Both guys were, but yeah, absolute lasers from Josh Allen. And man, I mean, I think another thing worth mentioning here is, even though there was some controversy at the conclusion of this game about what the Bills would do next, they really managed the clock well on this drive. They I think took over with a little bit over, a minute left, and they had timeouts. I think they had all their timeouts, but they only, once they sort of, I think, were progressing down the field, did like sort of a good job of, conserving clock when it was clear they needed to, when it was clear that they needed to, but then also not, being overly conservative, and sort of allowing, the clock to run a bit when they were approaching the red zone, and not panicking there. Um, because really, scoring a touchdown with, I guess it was 17 seconds left, or 18, whatever it was, 17, 18 seconds left. That's really, I mean, best case scenario, right? Is that you know, you don't give the Chiefs anything, but like, what more can you really ask for? I mean, that, like, you really, I think, did an excellent job here of managing the clock, using up as much of it as you could, while obviously, punching it in for a touchdown. And so, they, I think most of us that were watching thought that that was probably going to be enough. And then what happened next was just absolute mayhem.
Yeah, when you need a touchdown, it's a lot harder to run down the clock all the way as opposed to a field goal, especially when you get in close. You're like, all right, we have a manageable field goal. Let's run it down. When you need a touchdown, get to your point, you want to use the clock, but first and foremost, you want to make sure you get that touchdown. That's more important than running the clock down, because if you get one play, you don't score, it's over. Yeah, you'd think, that play was started with 17 seconds, ended with 13 seconds. So you think, all right, 13 seconds, it's Mahomes, but that's not enough time. Well, you would be wrong. And part of this, the controversy here that people are going to talk about for a long time, is the Bills' decision to kick deep, kick a touchback instead of Squib kicking it. I don't know what the timing is. I was kind of trying to look at it this morning. I know Frank Frigo, our chief technology officer, or chief innovation officer, sorry, is doing his risky business column on this, among other things from this game, looking at that. But I would think, when you squib it or even kick it, in the air, but to the 5 or the 10, I would think, 4 seconds maybe is a reasonable amount from the time they catch it to the time they get, 15, 20 yards and get tackled. And when I looked at that this morning, the difference between 13 seconds and 9 or 8, 9 and 9 seconds, with the Chiefs being at their own 25 yard line on both situations, drops the Chiefs from 9.5% win probability down to about 4 or 5%. So cuts it in half, basically, with only 9 seconds left. The other thing you kind of think about, though, is, if they squib it and it doesn't go very far, the Chiefs can catch it and just kneel it and only run a second off the clock. And if they're at their 25 or even closer, or even further, closer to midfield, that's really not beneficial. So you have the decision to squib. I really don't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, this may be more of an opinion thing, Scott, but I don't see any downside to the Bills not kicking it for a touchback. So basically, I don't see any downside to them kicking it short of the end zone, really, in any capacity.
Yeah, I mean, short of there being a touchdown return, right, which is just so low probability. But Yeah, I agree. I think it's easy to Monday morning quarterback this one. I think the difference there. If you would have asked me before, sort of looking, analyzing this with our model in a very sort of systematic way, I probably was like, maybe it's not a huge deal, but man, I mean, like that you're basically cutting their win probability in half. You really realize just how precious, every second is, and that's really great. One of the great things about our model is able to uncover things like that, insights like that, and yeah, I mean, it really seems like we've seen it in many, many games and probably haven't really thought too much of it, or really didn't think it mattered that much. But yeah, squib kicking here, if you're able to basically, burn another 4 or 5 seconds off the clock, even if you're going to concede an extra 10 yards, or 15 yards, it's got to be worth it. Yeah, it's got to be worth it. So it's, based on the analysis that you were just talking about. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you on this one, that squib kicking was really the way to go, and definitely an oversight to not go squib kick here on this kickoff. And obviously, still a lot of things have to go right for the Kansas City Chiefs. But man, did they! As with just I guess 8 seconds on the clock, 1st and 10 from Kansas City's 44. Patrick Mahomes is able to find Travis Kelce for a gain of 25 yards, get the timeout called, and set up a game tying field goal. It was, and they did it. Like two from I guess from the start of the drive, it was just two plays, and yeah, just connected on both of them. First to, I think it was Tyreek Hill for 19 yards before that, and then yeah, and that final play there to Kelsey for another 25, getting them in very reasonable field goal range. It wound up being a 49-yard field goal. So not only were they able to get in, even a semblance of field goal range, they got into a very makeable field goal range for Harrison Butker, who's obviously one of the better kickers in the league. And yeah, that play was good for our 5th most impactful play of the week, a gain of 24.1% GWC for the Chiefs. And yeah, Harrison Butker trots onto the field and connects to force overtime.
Yeah, and to your point, they talk about the kickoff. Instead of having just one play, before a field goal, or maybe one play and a Hail Mary, they're able to get two actual plays. Travis Kelce, don't know how he got that wide open. How you leave, especially him of all people. If it was maybe even a Mecole Hardman, or one of those other guys, Demarcus Robinson, or someone that's a third or fourth receiver there. But to let Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce get wide open on that last play is just unbelievable the way it played out. And it'll bring up the question that we talked about, or the question that comes up because of what happened in overtime. The Chiefs won the toss. Josh Allen called heads. It was tails. Chiefs got the ball. The Bills offense never saw the ball again. And it brings up the discussion of NFL overtime rules. Obviously, as fans watching the game, it's a shame that we didn't get to see Josh Allen with the ball in overtime. Not necessarily, there's the argument that the defense, couldn't make a stop. It's a team sport. Completely understandable. And I think you can be on the side of NFL overtime is fine. The defense didn't make the stop. They didn't stop him with 13 seconds. They didn't stop him in overtime. I think you can be on that side and still say that it kind of is a shame we didn't get to see Josh Allen to see how he could respond. But it will definitely bring up that conversation that maybe the overtime rules should be changed. But still, like the Bills defense was, I think, number one or top three in Football Outsiders DVOA, if not number one, and we're unable to make a stop. And just the way that game ended, like Scott, you and I were talking, like it seemed like whoever got the ball in overtime was going to win that game on a touchdown.
Yeah, right. I mean, I know we like to think in probability around here, but I totally agree. As a fan watching the game, it felt inevitable, right? That whoever got that ball first was going to be over based on what we saw at the end of that fourth quarter, and it was. Obviously, Mahomes went right down the field, connected with Kelce for the touchdown and the walk-off win. Yeah, you feel terrible. You feel terrible for that Bills offense, for Josh Allen, for Gabriel Davis, the performance they put up there. To not be given that chance at a rebuttal is obviously disappointing. I can totally understand that. I think to play devil's advocate, though, one of the things you do have to say about the overtime rules, even though they're not as fair as they could be, they certainly keep the stakes high from the very first play of overtime, right? Because it's sudden death, because if the offense connects on a big play touchdown, the game's over. And likewise, if the offense early in their drive turns the ball over, the game is likely over because the defense then has like pretty much, or their opponent pretty much takes over immediately in field goal range. So definitely keeps things, I think, at max excitement, the entire way, with the under the current rules. And maybe I think I can totally understand the opinion of folks wanting to change those rules. I think, from where I sit, I kind of like them the way they are. I think, like I said, I think it's good for the entertainment value of the game. But I think almost certainly we're going to see this discussed in the offseason. I think we've seen it in seasons past in big playoff games where, an important call or no call in a game winds up being sort of the genesis of discussion, that eventually leads to potential rule change, in the offseason with the rules committee in the NFL. So, yeah, like I said, I would be shocked if this doesn't come up in those meetings or gets floated as potential for rule change, as the NFLs want to do from time to time. So yeah, we'll definitely be interested to see where that discussion heads in the offseason.
Yeah, and we saw this just a couple years ago in 2019 when the Chiefs were on the other end of this against the Patriots. They were able to tie the game, get to overtime. Tom Brady and the Patriots got the ball first and went down and scored, and Mahomes never got the ball. And I think it was the Chiefs that proposed an overtime change, and all the other owners kind of shelved it and said, no, we're not going to do this. But now I would think that it's going to come up again, like you said. But it took a while for it to basically quit going from sudden death. It took a while for people to come around to change overtime to where we have this. If you score a field goal, the other team gets a chance versus field goal can win it. So we'll see. Maybe this is the time that it changes. I wouldn't think that it would. We see these kind of things happen where it's just so fresh and such a high profile game that it comes up, but it nothing really comes from it. But really, the only thing I think this game was missing, we talked about some of the fourth downs, but really the only thing it seemed to be missing was a 4th and 1 in overtime around midfield to see what Andy Reid would do, or maybe if they got a field goal or had to punt, see one from the Bills. But other than that, I mean, this game pretty much had everything you could ask for. It made us almost kind of forget about the game earlier in the day. That was awesome. But we will cover that one just a little bit here. That was the Rams-Bucks game, a wild finish. Really, Bucks were down big pretty much the whole game. It was 27-3 in the second half. The Rams, though, just could not shut the door, which is something we've seen from them the last, maybe not last week, but against San Francisco in that Week 18 game where the 49ers came back to win. Some big plays we had. They were up, and then the Cam Akers fumble when the Rams were really just trying to run out the clock. The Bucks would get the ball, ended up scoring on a 4th and 1. I believe that was that drive. Leonard Fournette took it in from 9 yards out. Ended up tying the game, and then Matt Stafford connecting with his favorite target, Cooper Kupp, on a couple big plays in the game. Just said Scott, the whole weekend was great. The Sunday night game kind of made us forget about this one, but you really, at least me, I thought Brady was going to do it again. It wasn't 28-3, it was 27-3. Comes back to tie it, and I thought he was going to pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely the narrative, right? It was ripe for the taking for Tampa Bay as they slowly but surely crept their way back into it, rallying down, like you said, I think it was 21 points to tie it up, under 2 minutes left in that fourth quarter. And, we talked a little bit about it in the Bills sort of managing the clock. Maybe, I mean, hard to say, right? But yeah, they just scored a little bit too quickly. I mean, and obviously you can't really fault them for that because they just needed to score to tie the game up. But yeah, scored just a little bit too quickly, leaving Matthew Stafford about 40 seconds left. And yeah, he, went out there in very similar shades to what Mahomes did in his final possession in regulation, albeit Stafford had a little bit more time and got started a little bit more slowly too, because he got sacked and fumbled, but luckily recovered on the first play in the subsequent drive, and then just proceeded to connect with Cooper Kupp, deep down the field twice in a row, once for 20 yards, another time for 44 yards. Once again, setting up not only just, a shot at a field goal, but very, very makeable. In this case, very makeable field goal range. You know, it was a 30-yard field goal, so basically money, distance for kickers in the NFL. And yeah, just absolutely, similar shades to that. It's foreshadowing, I guess you could say, to that night game. And just another great game in a weekend chock full of them. And great come from behind performance for Brady and the Bucs, but just not quite enough, and beat on the final possession by the Rams.
Yeah, the Bucks were down to below 1% to win. Obviously, with 4 minutes, less than 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, when they scored that touchdown to tie and got the extra point, or when they tied it up, they were up to 44 and a half. They actually did creep just over 50% at 50.8% when the Rams had 2nd and 11 at their own 24-yard line. And that's when Stafford hit Kupp on the big, the 20, I think that was a 20-yard play up to the LA 44. And then the very next play was the bomb to Kupp down to the Tampa Bay 12. So Bucks comeback actually did get just over 50%, but were not able to pull it off in something you don't see often when Tom Brady is the one making the comeback. So that will do it for the top 5 most impactful, the biggest storylines. There were, the 2 Saturday games. We can't forget about those. Really, they were exciting. Didn't have the same level of excitement. After those 2 games, we thought, man, this is awesome. How is, Sunday can't top this? There's no way. Sunday did completely top this. But those Saturday games, Scott, I don't know if there's anything you want to add from those again. They were not really any big 4th down decisions. I know the 49ers did have one that Shanahan made the right call this week. But aside from that, it was, didn't really match Sunday, but still 2 games that ended on walk-off field goals.
Yeah. 2 games that came down to the wire again. Very different character to those games. They wound up playing out much slower pace. It definitely looked like that San Fran Green Bay game was affected by the weather to a degree. And then obviously, whenever Tennessee plays and they got Derrick Henry back, they can definitely be a grinded out type of team. So we saw a lot less points in those games. Scoring was definitely at a premium there, unlike on Sunday. But each of those games was exciting in its own right. And I know, that late Saturday game left you, going to bed sad later Saturday night.
Depressed, very
Yeah,
depressed.
sorry for your loss. But I think, yeah, just all the way around this weekend, great performances. Out of all the teams, and really, really great games.
Yeah, and then Saturday, the first game there, the Bengals, might be, I would say the 49ers are the bigger upset, even though, the Titans, that was a big upset. I don't think many people expected Cincinnati to win, but Ryan Tannehill just had a bad game. You can't hit through 3 interceptions, the third one coming with 20 seconds left. Joe Burrow hit Jamar Chase right at the field goal, I think the field goal target line on the very next play, and they're able to get the field goal. So just a bad game all around from Tannehill, who now both 1 seeds out of the playoffs with Green Bay and Tennessee losing. So 2 more, though, should be exciting games next week. We've got the rematch between the Bengals and the Chiefs. Should be a ton of fun there. And then the Rams and 49ers will meet for the 3rd time. So the NFC winner is going to come from the West no matter what. So that should be, again, both of those games should be awesome on Sunday. So we'll now transition into the top 5 most impactful plays. Biggest win probability swings is what these are. We've covered number 5, 4, 3, and 2 already. So we'll just go over those quickly and then get to that number 1. Number 5 was that pass from Mahomes to Kelsey to set up the game-winning the game-tying field goal. Number 4 was the touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill that gave them the lead with a minute left. And those 2 were 24.1 and 29.5% win probability swings. Number 3 was the Josh Allen touchdown pass to Gabriel Davis with 2 minutes left, or coming at the 2-minute warning, was 29.6%. And then number 2 was the touchdown pass to Gabriel Davis with 17 seconds left. That was worth 35.6%. Actually took the Bills up to 92%, just under 92% win probability. And then number 1 was the play I just mentioned. Tannehill has intercepted. It's 3rd and 5 at the Tennessee 40. So they're 28 seconds left, got 2 timeouts, got some time to get down into field goal range, but he's intercepted, dropping their win probability by 40.8% from 69.3 down to 28.6 or 28.5. So really, that was just obviously a huge play. Again, I mentioned Tannehill had a really bad game, throwing 3 interceptions, but this one obviously the worst, coming at the very end of the game, not much time left, setting up the Bengals to win that.
Yeah, just absolutely killer. I mean, I think the only thing that could have made it worse if it was a pick six, or basically something like a pick six where Bengals were going to be able to free roll at victory by last second field goal. So yeah, it just absolutely backbreaker and a huge moment. Yeah, I don't know what more to say about it. It obviously hurts to be a Titans fan seeing that, and they were I wouldn't say absolutely in control, but certainly in much better position to win that game. Heading into that play, they were around midfield and really threatening, as you mentioned, with 2 timeouts for getting into field goal range for a shot at a win of their own, and then just to have that happen is just absolute nightmare stuff for Tennessee Titans fans.
And the Titans came into that game, I think may have mentioned it last week, but as the worst number 1 seed in DVOA history. They really had not played as well as their record indicated. They did have a lot of injuries, as we mentioned, over the year. Mike Vrabel did a really good job getting that team to the playoffs with so many players missing. But just really, the underlying metrics did not really like the Titans at all. I think they had a negative DVOA. And it kind of came back to bite them against the Bengals, who really weren't great either in terms of DVOA. They were right at league average at 17th at 0.0%. But the Bengals able to come away with another big win, and Joe Burrow just showing why he was the number 1 pick last year. Always calm, always cool, always collected. It seems like nothing really bothers him, and he's moving on to the AFC Championship thanks in part to that interception of Ryan Tannehill. What's really awesome too, one more thing on this game, I don't know if you saw this, Scott, but Evan McPherson, the kicker for the Bengals, Joe Burrow after the game said that McPherson was on the sideline taking some practice swings with his leg, and as he was walking out onto the field, looked at the backup quarterback and said, "Whew, looks like we're going to the AFC Championship." Before he even went on the field, I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. You love the confidence. You love the confidence in that massive moment, and that was no gimme of a kick, 52-yarder. So you love the confidence to look the starting quarterback in the eye, the franchise player in the eye, as the lowly kicker on that NFL roster, and can project that confidence, go out there and execute. It was awesome. So, Joe Burrow, speaking of which, one final little tidbit: sacked 9 times in that game. Ouch, she's got to be feeling it, feeling it over the, yesterday and today. So hopefully, if that Bengals team wants to have any real chance at pulling off another upset next week, they're going to need to protect him better. But certainly a great performance from him nonetheless. He overcame all of that pressure, connected with his receivers for 348 yards. And yeah, they're gonna be the big dogs, the big underdogs from here on out.
Yeah, especially against the Chiefs, even though they just beat them back in week 16 or 17. But yeah, I gotta imagine they're going to be underdogs, and might not be large coming up on the AFC Championship. I can't imagine it's a double digit, but could be close to a touchdown. I would think the way the Chiefs played it yesterday, but we'll have to wait and see what those look like as we get closer to the weekend. But that will do for the top 5 most impactful plays. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe to all of our Edge Sports shows, again, on our Edge Sports podcast network, as well as our Edge Sports YouTube channel. So now that those top 5 impactful plays are out of the way, we're going to talk about the top 5 best 4th down decisions from the weekend. Number 5 and number 4, we covered. Those were the 2 on the opening drive for the Bills. The 4th and 2 at midfield for Buffalo was worth 4.3% in win probability, and then the 4th and goal at the 1 was 4.6. We had one I mentioned a little bit earlier. Shanahan did not make a big error this week. He had one really good decision. Came down in the 4th quarter, 6:14 left, getting down almost to the point where you have to go for it. I guess if they wanted to kick a field goal here, try and hold Green Bay and win it on a touchdown. But they were down 7, 6:14 left in the game, 4th and 1 at the Green Bay 19, chooses to go for it this time around. Is stuffed. The Green Bay defense did a really good job for most of that game, able to stop them just when you think they're going to go on and win. And things changed for the worse for Green Bay, but in this moment, getting that stop, but Shanahan making the right decision, putting his team in the best chance position to win, was a 5.1% increase in pre-snap win probability for those 49ers.
Yeah, I remember watching this one live and being moderately surprised that he went for it. Obviously, I knew that we would like that decision. Winds up being good for about 5.1% GWC in this moment. Yeah, Kyle Shanahan, though, he kind of keeps you guessing a little bit. Doesn't really have a good track record, but yeah, and even here, even though it's very clear, I think, to you and I that this is the right call, there's definitely some doubt in my mind that he would find it, being that there was 6:14 left on the clock. I guess, being that it was 4th and 1, just too appealing, to go for it here. Unfortunately, for the San Francisco 49ers, they wind up getting stuffed and turning the ball back over to Green Bay in this one. But yeah, Kyle Shanahan, you know, uh, that game next week, looking ahead a little bit with that matchup with McVay. Obviously, there's lots of themes in that one with the two California teams within the out there in the West, and certainly two young head coaches with reputations for being kind of offensive whizzes, but also very sneakily conservative on 4th down. Although Kyle Shanahan here winds up finding the right call on a 4th and 1.
Yeah, and speaking West Coast California teams, the Rams will be hosting in SoFi Stadium. With a win, it would be 2 years in a row. We've got a home team or got a team playing in the Super Bowl in their home stadium if the Rams are able to win that with Green Bay now out of the playoffs. LA is going to get 2 more games at home this year, potentially, or the stadium will have 2 more games. But the Rams looking to do what the Bucs did last year and win the Super Bowl in their home stadium. So should be a very good matchup next week there as well. Moving on to number 2, the Titans also had a 4th and 1 that did not work for them, but still was the right call going for it. 4th and 1 at the Cincy 35 with 7:21 left in the game. This one a little bit easier or maybe a little bit more difficult of a decision because they're tied at this point. The other one for the 49ers, they were down 7 with 6 minutes left, but here they're tied, 7 minutes left. Can go for a 53-yard field goal, which isn't unreasonable. And Randy Bullock's been kind of hit or miss, I think. Been pretty good for the most part, though. But passing up a chance to take the lead for now, at least at that point, to go for it with Derrick Henry. A lot of the complaint on this is, surprisingly, of all things, that they used Derrick Henry. Or I think one of the complaints I saw from people was one that they didn't use Derrick Henry on 3rd down. I think it was a Tannehill. Tannehill tried to get it. But then Deonta Foreman was a lot more effective than Derrick Henry in this game, with Henry as being his first game back since he had had surgery on his foot from earlier in the year, missed 9 games. But it's a 6.1% increase to go for it. So all other things, not including any of those other kind of circumstances, but going for it here was the right call. Instead of Vrabel trying to just say, "Hey, let's get a lead," he decides to go for it, try and run more clock, get a touchdown, or maybe just burn more clock before kicking a field goal.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we definitely like the decision, but yeah, I could have seen him kick the field goal there just based on, I think, Mike Vrabel's record in sort of these situations. But yeah, I think, especially when you got Derrick Henry in the backfield, 4th and 1, the field goal is no chip shot, so that definitely makes you more likely to go for it, and then yeah, punting here is just not an option. Being on the Cincinnati 35, because yeah, it's just I know it's cold or whatever, but yeah, you're not going to gain anything from, or much of anything from the field position change. So I think if Derrick Henry's if he's healthy enough to play, if he's suited up, you're going to go with him. He's obviously tops in the league there. Bettors realize this. They definitely attach a lot of weight to him when setting those lines, or placing bets to set those lines, and he can definitely swing things whether or not he's in or out. But yeah, you wonder, right? You wonder, coming back from a pretty serious injury, if maybe he was hampered a bit and sort of pushing through when it might have limited his effectiveness. Yeah, you mentioned Dante Foreman, definitely actually outrushed him in this one. 66 yards for Foreman versus Henry's 62, and but most of that coming on just a breakout run by Foreman for 45 yards. So yeah, you wonder if that was just sort of lightning in a bottle, or if Derrick Henry was indeed sort of hampered by that injury, that lingering effects of that injury. But unfortunately for Tennessee in this situation, even though they made the right call, Henry winds up getting stuffed, and they turn it over on downs in a very big moment. I think you could definitely play, coulda, shoulda, woulda here, because they wind up losing by 3 from the score that they were at in this moment. But I think long run, right move to hold on to the ball, continue just to grind away that clock, and obviously play for the touchdown, in a game like we said at the top, where points were definitely at a premium. So realizing the full equity here on this possession, trying to punch it in, I think is the right move, even though it didn't work out here. And winds up being our second best go of the week, good for 6.1% GWC.
Yep, and number one is one that we covered already, talking about that Chiefs and Bills game. It was Andy Reid's 4th and 1 at the Buffalo 40 there early in the third quarter in a tie game. That one was worth 8% for the Chiefs. So now we're going to move on to our top 5 worst fourth down decisions from the weekend. None of them, I mean, we had a couple we talked about that weren't very good, pretty bad. But none of them were as egregious or like super late in the game like we've seen in the last few weeks. Starting with number 5 was one we covered. It was the Bills. That 4th and 4 from their own 49, so right at midfield in the second quarter. The tie game, McDermott had already gone for it on a 4th and 2 at midfield, a 4th and goal at the 1. Decides to punt here, though, and ends up being a 3.5% error. Number 4 is going back to the Titans-Bengals game. Titans were down 6. Similar situation to that Bills-Chiefs one, that number 5 there. It was 4th and 3 at their own 47, so again, just shy of midfield. The first play of the second quarter, deciding to punt. 3.6% decrease in pre-snap win probability. Not super surprising for Vrabel. He's actually been a little bit better this year than you would think. I think in our CCI metric, he was actually like 11th in fourth down decision making, but not really surprising. It seems like he goes more conservative. He was number 9 in the regular season, but don't really look at him as one of those super aggressive decision makers. And in this situation, on a 4th and 3 at midfield, decides to punt.
Yeah, and this is one of those situations where you see coaches separate themselves, right? And I think Vrabel has at times been identified as a coach that likes to be more aggressive on fourth down. I think if we look at and certainly relative to coaches in the past, he's more aggressive as just about any coaches that heads a team in 2022 now. But yeah, certainly here, this is I think the next sort of frontier for NFL coaches to really sort of separate themselves. The most analytically minded from those that still get too conservative. And I think especially when you have Derrick Henry in that backfield, it's 4th and 3, so maybe it's just outside of their comfort zone. It'd be interesting to know, hey, are they going for it on 4th and 2 or 4th and 1 here? But even still, our model likes to go here. It winds up being a pretty modest error at just over 3.5%, but nonetheless winds up landing at number 4 this week on our list.
And then coming in at number 3 is Packers against the 49ers, up 7-3 in the third quarter with pretty much halfway through the third quarter. 4th and 4 at their own 38. And this just kind of speaks more to the power of that Packers offense. They're the number 1 offense in DVOA. But it's a 4.1% error to punt in this situation. I guess you could say the way this game played out, maybe this isn't as bad of an error. You'd still like to see them go for it when you've got Aaron Rodgers. They also had one that was I think a 4th and 2. It was just outside of our top 5 errors. 4th and 2 at their own 46. Halfway through the second quarter, they decided to try and draw them off sides, take a delay game. That was 3.2. But this one, 4th and 4 at their own 38. Again, it's a 4.1% error. They were up around 70% at the time, so not huge as far as relative decrease, but still with Aaron Rodgers, you'd like to see them go for that and take a chance to pick up the first down.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, I think what really comes through on this one, because it's there's nothing that immediately jumps out, right? I think 4th and 4 and from your own 38, those are both pretty marginal circumstances to be going for here. Also, you're leading by 4. But yeah, I mean, I think when you got Rodgers in that offense rocking, you can take liberties, right? And so if you're Matt LaFleur, he's definitely, I think, done a good job across the board, over his career in Green Bay in pulling the trigger in these moments and going for it. But this one just kind of falls maybe outside of that threshold for him. And even though I think many watching the game wouldn't flag this as being that bad, and even still, it's 4.1%, which isn't a massive error by our standards. But in a big game like this, when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you have that offense, Devontae Adams. Yeah, you definitely want to be pushing your edge in a close game. Who knows if they wind up keeping the offense on the field in this one? Maybe it would have turned out differently. But you know, uh, hard to say, right? And once again, hindsight's 2020. But yeah, we like going forward here, and unfortunately for Matt LaFleur and Green Bay Packers, they passed on it, and lands at number 3 on our list this week.
And then number 2 and number 1 we've already covered as well. So Chiefs at 4th and 5 at the Buffalo 46. Early in the fourth quarter, deciding to punt was a 5.2% error. And then the Bills passing on a 4th and 1, which actually 4th and less than 1 might have been like half a yard at that point. But we see it as a 4th and 1 at their own 34-yard line in the third quarter. It was 7.4% error. So that wraps up our top 5 worst fourth down decisions of the weekend. In doing so, it wraps up all of our top 5s. You can see all of these on our website on EdjSports.com in our top 5 section, as well as our EdjSports app. It's EdjSports. No Monday Night Football preview this week. Last week we had the Monday Night Football game for the wildcard round, but all of the games have been completed. There will be no more Monday Night Football. So that will do it for our show today. I want to thank you all for listening in. I want to remind you that we will be here again next Monday to recap the conference championship. Not sure that it will be able to match what this past weekend was, but you never know. We could have 2 games that come down to the wire that almost tie or go into a second overtime or whatever the playoff rule is for that, because I don't even know because it hasn't come to it. But we'll have that on Thursday. Also have our betting preview for the 2 conference championship games. Both of those shows can be found on the Edge Sports Podcast Network or our Edge Sports YouTube channel. We'll also have our pregame videos for both of the conference championship games. Again, please give us 5-star reviews. Help us grow our audience on the Edge Sports Podcast Network, as well as the Edge Sports YouTube channel. And then, as just mentioned, our site and our app are EdjSports.com and EdjSports, EDJ Sports, available for both iOS and Android. And last but not least, Football Outsiders is currently running a special. They're our partners at Football Outsiders. It's their premium subscription called FO Plus. It's just 99 cents a week for annual subscriptions. Have a lot of really good data and analysis from this weekend's action, some college data and analysis, lots of good off-season analysis as well, betting information, fantasy for daily fantasy and season-long fantasy for this year and next year as well. So check them out. That's footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. Scott, thank you as always for joining me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week leading up to what is hopefully a couple really good games in our conference championships.
Thanks, Ian. I enjoyed breaking the games down with you as usual, and we'll see you next week.